Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Luke with the Tailgate. We're here again to talk about some of the things going on in and around college football. Now, today is going to be a little bit more revolved around SEC. Most of the things I have to say, most of the things I want to talk about are in that SEC category and with the SEC teams. And the first was in regards to Kirby Smart. Now, obviously, all the coaches are going to be talked to. All the coaches are going to be asked about the big things going on in their program, the big things going on in college sports, maybe about other teams. Now, Kirby Smart was asked about Dan Lanning and Oregon and just, kind of what's going on there. Now, obviously, for those of you who don't know, Dan Lanning was Kirby Smart and Georgia's defensive coordinator, and I think their outside linebackers coach from 2018 to 2021. So they have a friendship and they have a history, and I think that's something that as outsiders looking in, we need to make sure that we kind of understand some of these dynamics. These aren't just coaches who are talking about another coach that they have never met, that they don't know. They had a relationship. They have a personal relationship here. And so I think you need to take that into kind of some context because he did say something about Oregon and NIL and talked about meeting Phil Knight and wishing that he could get some of that NIL money that he's sharing with Dan Lanning. Now, I've heard a lot of people kind of throwing shade at him, talking about, he's Georgia, they've got NIL, all this kind of stuff. But I think this is something that people need to kind of back off just a little bit. I think this was more of one of those, some of the friends that I've had, we take little jabs at each other, and it has nothing to do with me not being happy for them. I'm sure Kirby is happy for Dan Lanning. These guys spend a lot of time together. They probably like each other, is my guess from what I've seen. So this is just one of those little, buddies giving each other shots. I think the biggest thing that I have is people are making a big deal about this and they're talking about it. Again, I don't see that as a big deal. I think everybody would probably, if they're being honest with you, like to have Phil Knight's Nike money coming in, the blank check that apparently he has given them, or at least that's what kind of people are alluding to. I'm an Ohio State fan. We've got a great collective. We've got a lot of players who are making good money. We're being talked about as the team that's buying, trying to buy a championship this year. And I personally would love to have Phil Knight giving us a blank check here. So I think we need to back off a little bit from that aspect of everything. I think the issue that I run into is when we start to talk about Kirby Smart and what he said and what he's done when it comes to the driving related instances here. Now Kirby Smart has obviously Georgia, I should say, has had a lot of issues when it has come to driving and reckless driving and speeding. Obviously, he's had players die. He's had a player and a team member, somebody die. And, one of the things that he said, and excuse me, I'm trying to pull this quote up. I had it and then I lost it. He was asked about it, and he started talking about just the fact that they not only, where is it? So he talks about how disappointed he is. He uses the term disappointed. They talked about the process and all these things. But one of the things he said that kind of got me frustrated a little bit, and I'll kind of get into why, is he talked about how, hey, we get all these driving things and everybody obviously is talking about these. But what they don't see is that we've done more. We've done a lot more than everybody else when it comes to giving these guys education and trying to teach them how to do things. And we're the only team that's actually kicked somebody off for, repeated driving related issues. And he kind of went through this thing of saying everything that they've done that nobody else has done. And when you start to think about it, and when at first glance, you kind of go, and I'll say it, me, first glance, I hear all these things and I go, oh, well, that's pretty cool. Like, okay, yeah, they've got education. They've got this, yeah, they are doing a lot of things that other teams aren't doing. And then I thought about it a little bit more and I said, well, you're doing things that other teams aren't doing because other teams don't have the issues that you have. And I think that's where we're kind of at a little disconnect here. Yeah, that's great that you're giving your guys defensive driving courses that the team is paying for. But my guess is that the team is just tired of having to deal with players getting reckless driving tickets. They're tired of dealing with all this press that they're getting from, excuse the term, for people being stupid. I get that they're kids. I get that they're kids with a lot of money that they don't know what to do with. And I get that cars are kind of the cool thing, and that's what people kind of gravitate towards, fast cars. And I get all that. But at the end of the day, they need to be making better decisions. Once you become an adult, it's time to move on from being childish and take a little bit more responsibility. And that's what needs to happen here. So, I hear Kirby Smart. I hear what he's saying. And obviously, as a coach, he's going to defend himself. He's going to defend his program. And to an extent, he's going to defend his kids. He did say something about they're good kids. And that's fine. I'm not saying that they're not good kids. I think most people can separate the fact of are they a good or bad person, and are they making bad decisions? You can make bad decisions and still be a good person. I totally get that. But at some point, there has to be something more done. We can't sit here and continue to have reckless driving after reckless driving, and Kirby Smart continue to get up there and say, well, we've got good education. Well, we're doing more than anybody else. We're finding them with their NIL. At some point, it's got to be, here's where the line ends. We're drawing the line. This happens, you're off the team. And I don't know if I want to be off the team. I struggle with that a little bit because, obviously we want kids to have the ability to mess up and learn. We go back to, Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State. And again, I think that they handled that very well, minus what Mike Gundy, how he talked about how he's drunk 1,000 times. And, I'll talk about that here in a minute. But we got to get past this. We got to figure it out. They might be good kids, but we got to stop making these excuses for Kirby Smart. You've got to start drawing the line in the sand, just saying it has to end. And there has to be some repercussions. And that might mean doing some things that might hurt. That's generally what learning does, is it hurts sometimes. And I think that's where we're getting to Georgia. Now, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows if this is going to continue? I would love for this last instance. I think 2 guys got in separate issues. I would love for that to be the last one. I would love to be able to stop talking about the driving of Georgia. I would love to stop seeing Fast and the Furious memes with Georgia players' heads stuck on the drivers. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. Now, I did say, moving on to kind of Ollie Gordon, and I did say we were going to do all SEC, but I then realized as I'm talking, because obviously I don't cut. If I mess up, I mess up. Then I never came back and talked about Gundy. I talked about Ollie Gordon. I did one of those little 1-minute YouTube things and talked about Ollie Gordon, but I did not get back to talking about Mike Gundy. Now, Mike Gundy, when he was talking about Ollie Gordon and what his punishment was and what he was going to do, did a little something different. He started talking about how, Ollie Gordon, he looked up what the blood alcohol content was. And obviously, I think it's a point, can't remember, I think it's 0.08 is what the legal limit was. And Ollie Gordon was at a 0.10. Then he started looking into it. And he's like, oh, you have to take into account their body mass and their height and all this kind of stuff. And he's like, the equivalent of like 3 or 4 beers. And I don't have it pulled up, so I apologize for that. But essentially, Mike Gundy's point was, man, I've had 3 or 4 beers and driven thousands of times. And there was a little bit of an uproar. And I think that it was the wrong thing to say. Even if it's true, you don't go and defend something like this when there's lots of, what's going on with Georgia. There's lots of people who have lost their life because of somebody who had 3 or 4 beers and got in a car and got in an accident. So it's not the right thing to say. I think that where he was going, I think he was in a good place, and he was coming from a good place in the way that he was defending his kids, saying, hey, I've done it before, and I need to kind of look at my life and know that I need to, I shouldn't have done that, and that's not a good thing. He's not defending the action, but just saying if we as a people kind of look, if we as people look kind of internally and go, yeah, we've probably done stupid things. I did stupid things when I was 20-something. Now, that doesn't make it right. And I don't think I would ever tell media that I'm, that I drove drunk. I don't think that that's the right thing to do. But I do take it as Mike Gundy trying to do his best to protect his players. I heard one podcaster say that Mike Gundy is kind of like a toned down version of Mike Leach. I think that's 100% accurate. He just kind of talks. And I have the same issue where a lot of times I talk and it doesn't really ever process through my brain. And so I'm having to train myself to let it go up here and then out here, as opposed to just out here and then I think about it. But he apparently doesn't have that filter. But now we do have from Mike Gundy, we do have I'm 40, I'm a man, and we have I've driven drunk 1,000 times. So, but that's where I stand with Mike Gundy. And I know it's probably clear as mud right there. But my take on it is I think he was trying to do the right thing and just said something totally dumb. I've done it before, but I still don't think that it's as bad as what's going on at Georgia. And I think that we're missing the point here. Oklahoma State did. This is the first time that it's been reported that it's been big out there. And not to mention that how they handled it, I think, was one of the best things that came out of that. Was essentially Mike Gundy went up to Ollie and said, "Hey, you did it. You did something dumb, and you gotta figure it out, and you gotta figure out how to make it right. Do you want to go to Big 12 Media Day?" You know, I can't remember if he asked him or if he told him he's going to take him. And Ollie went, and Ollie sat in front of the crowd, and he answered the questions. He talked about how it wasn't a good decision. He faced the fire essentially, and I applaud him for that. I applaud him for getting out there and just saying, "Hey, wasn't smart. I didn't do it, and I'm going to use this to get better." So again, I like, even though the words that were used by Gundy, I don't like, and I don't think were the most wise thing to say. I think that overall, the experience from Oklahoma State was a whole lot better than what's coming out of Athens, Georgia. But that's just my take on it. So comment, let me know what you think. Yeah, let me know. And now the other thing, and this is where I thought it was really funny at SEC Media Day. Most people know that Nick Saban retired, right? I'm hoping that everybody knows that by now, and that I'm not breaking the news to somebody just now. But everybody knows that Nick Saban has retired, and he is now not a coach. The one thing that he has probably never done, and I'm pretty sure he said it in his comment about this, was that he's never worn a credential before. He has never gone somewhere where he had to walk into a media day and he had to have a credential, a press credential, whatever it may be, with him. He found out, and good on the security guard in this one, and I'm going to take the security guard side, that he was actually denied entry, I think, into the whole thing. Let me see. Yes, denied entry into SEC's media day because he did not have his credential. Now, I'm pretty sure that what happened is he just forgot it, which, hey, we all forget things. But I think it's very funny that the GOAT was not allowed into media day for not having his credential. And I will say, I've heard some people obviously people get mad because Nick Saban is Nick Saban. He's the GOAT. He's the greatest. He's the best coach of all times, whatever it may be. That security guard should have known who he was. And I'll tell you, I've never done security at something like, an SEC media day. Way back in the day, I did things where I had to check IDs and I had to, kind of pay attention to what's going on around me. And the one thing that I'll tell you is I never really looked at somebody. There was never a time that I was looking at somebody in the face and going, "Oh, who is this?" My whole purpose was just, do you have the piece of paper? Do you have the credential that you need to have to be where you are? So I applaud the security guard for doing his job. Good on him for doing his job. I just think it's kind of funny that Saban is getting kind of the feeling of what it's like to not be Nick Saban for just once in his life. He's getting to see what it's like to be a commoner a little bit and have to have a credential where he goes. Now, here's the other thing. Saban, in the same remark, somebody is dropping something off for me. Saban, in the same remark, was asked about Texas. And they're talking about how Texas, they're saying Texas always ran the Big 12, which is not really the case. They never really ran the Big 12. I looked it up, and I think it was 3 or 4 times in the past 15 years I can't really remember what the stats were, but like three or four times in the past 15 years that they actually won the Big 12. But Saban was asked about this, and let's see what his quote was. He said, "What kind of tickles me is all these people asking these questions about how Texas always ran the conference they were in. They're not going to run the SEC." Now, the title of this article that I read was Alabama legend Nick Saban, Texas not going to run the SEC after move from the Big Ten. Now, here's the thing: is I think this is a little bit of clickbait here. Obviously, when you look at Texas and you look at Oklahoma, they left the Big 12 as the top two. No question about it. The top two programs in the Big 12, and they're coming to the SEC, who has a lot more firepower in it, I guess you could say. Just Georgia, Alabama. You look at those teams, and you know that Texas and Oklahoma aren't going to have the same path. That path may not be as easy to get into the playoffs. I mean, obviously now with the larger playoffs, it's going to be a little bit easier. But winning the SEC is not going to be as easy as it may have been to win the Big 12, even though they didn't do it as often as people like to think that they did it. So, but I might keep going there. I don't know, but they didn't run the Big 12, I don't think. But anyway, so people are talking about how this is Nick Saban throwing shade at Texas, and honestly, I don't see that. I don't think that this is Nick Saban trying to pretend like Texas isn't going to be a team to be dealt with. Now, and one of the things that always happens is there's an ebb and flow. And it happened in the past. Honestly, with Saban around, it didn't happen as much with Saban, where conferences and teams kind of, you have a few years, a few really good years of Texas, then a few good years of Oklahoma. Alabama kind of took 15, 20 years, whatever it was, and just kind of dominated the sport for a while. But just because he said they're not going to run the SEC doesn't mean that he doesn't think that they're going to be a good team, because he also picked Georgia and Texas to be the teams that were going to be in the SEC championship. So that's what he said. He got denied entry because he didn't have his credentials. Then he said they're not going to run the SEC, and everybody ran with that statement. And again, he's given his honest opinion. The one thing that I think was really kind of cool is he even said something about Alabama and how they need to get their secondary or the corners figured out. And I thought that was a big thing for him to say, because people are going to forget that's his secondary and that's his corners, because he just left. So he even had a little bit of what's the word I'm looking for? Criticism for the position players of a group that he really helped to do. So I think Nick Saban's a pretty down to earth guy in terms of how he thinks and what he's saying. And I don't think he's going to throw shade at the Texas team. I think he's more just kind of giving his opinion, and I respect him all the more for that. Now, one last thing that I'm going to talk about, and this will be something that I'm just going to mention, and we'll probably talk about it in a little more detail when more information comes out. Now, one of the big things in this past couple months was the departure of Cormani McClain from Colorado, and he ended up in Florida. And the kind of just whirlwind of things that happened because of that, with Deion questioning his drive and what he was doing off the field in terms of his preparation, and that him kind of shooting back that he didn't want to play for clicks. There has been some speculation, and I don't really remember the guy's name, but he was from the he does do a podcast, and I think he's a writer for, I want to say, On3, that works with the team, who has said that Cormani McClain has had some issues at Florida as well. And some of those issues that he alleges are that, he's not doing things properly. He's showing late to some meetings, which kind of fits the narrative that Deion was saying, and that even having to do extra work in terms of, I think it was weights or running, that didn't help. Then it started to be that he had to, that the team or his position, his defense had to do it. and that didn't stop it. Then the whole team had to do it, and that didn't stop it. So again, this is haven't heard a whole lot from it. The source, while I'm not saying they're not credible, I am saying it's the one source that I've seen say it, and I want to get a little bit more information behind that before I bring it full-fledged into what my thoughts are. But I just think it's interesting. And, for everything that I've said about Deion, how I started off when he first came to Colorado, really loving the hire, loving what he brought to Colorado, loved that, first couple months and first, into the season, the first few weeks into the season last year, to kind of mid-season and beyond, to where I really started losing a little bit of respect. I may have to actually eat my words here, and we will see. We'll see what happens. But I wanted to at least mention that and kind of preface the fact that I may be eating my words on Deion, and I may owe Mr. Prime, Optimus Prime, Deion Prime, Mr. Sanders, I may be owing him an apology. So that will happen. We will just see. So, guys, thank you so much for joining me. As always, make sure that you comment. Let me know what your thoughts are on everything. Make sure you like, and then please go subscribe to the Tailgate on YouTube. You can find me at LBW Tailgate, at LBW Tailgate on Twitter. And we will see you next time. Thanks, guys.